Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about creating charts using a third-party app called Charty using iPad or iOS shortcuts. Before going into the details about how to create such charts, let me just run through the shortcut first. I run this shortcut and this is the output that I get from this particular shortcut. In fact, this is the output. I can make various changes into it. For example, I can remove the border, I can show or not show the grid. I like the legend on the right hand side, and I can also change various attributes corresponding to the series. So each series is a relationship between a y and an x. I don't want to change the label. I can change the color to look something more yellowish. I think it may be useful to try out a different style, maybe dashed. I also maybe want to smooth out the line. I can make the marker a little bigger. I want to definitely show the marker. We see this is a new plot that has been generated. I can very conveniently just share it, and I can change the different things here. Like I can change it to a different profile. Let's say I can change, let's say I don't want a dark one, I want a light background, or if I just use a dark one, whether I want a transparent background or not, and the width and the height I can mention, and then I can conveniently export this to my email or AirDrop or any such service. It's fairly trivial to create such kinds of plots. And now let's try and create such a plot, such a chart using Charty, and we'll create this shortcut from scratch. So I click on create a new shortcut. Let me name it my second plot. The key idea here is to create a series X and a series Y. So X acts as the index, as the X axis, and corresponding to each entry on the X axis, we have an entry in the Y axis. Now we can have multiple such series, like we can have a series for log X or sin X or tangent of X, so on and so forth. So corresponding to each X, we require at least one Y to make this kind of a line plot. The first thing we want to create is to create this X series. So for this, we'll require a loop. We'll keep on adding one element at a time. So we'll use this repeat. And let's say we want to create a series of length 10. Inside this repeat, I want to now add the index into a variable X, right? So think of X starting as an empty list. And each time I go through this repeat where I enter into the loop, I append the index of the loop into my variable X. So I'm going to be using add to variable, and I put it inside the repeat loop. Repeat index is an index into this loop, and I add this into a variable X, and I do something similar. So I'll create two Y series. I'll create Y1 corresponding to logarithmic of X and Y2 corresponding to sinusoid of X. So I first need to calculate these two things. So I'll do a calculation which acts not on X, but it acts on repeat index. Click on plus, click on the ellipsis, I change the function, scientific operation, I do logarithmic of X. And once I do a calculation, I get a calculation result. That calculation result I can add to a variable, which is going to be my variable y1. So if you notice, it beautifully ties up this calculation and the calculate result. There is a connection between these two nodes. Similarly, we can do a calculate. We can add a calculate, which acts not on y1 but on the repeat index. Instead of plus, I click on ellipsis, I choose the scientific operation. I have previously chosen logarithmic. Now I choose sinusoid of X. Once I do this calculation, I get a calculation result, which I want to add to variable. I click on add to variable, and I add calculation result to y2. Now at this point of time, once I have finished this loop, I have Now basically three arrays: x going from 1 through 10, y1 going from log 1 to log 10, and y2 going from sine of 1 to sine of 10, right? We should quickly just verify that we're getting the correct things. I don't want this message. Do you want to continue? I just want to show, let's say, y1. And let's just run this and see what we get. We get a 0. We get, okay, so perhaps the problem that, so oh, in fact, this is good because now you're seeing that we are appending one element at a time into this variable y1, and this will now beep 10 times, where we can see that this array is growing in size. I actually intended to keep this y1 outside the loop, so that now if I run this, I just get the logarithmic of all the numbers from 1 through 10 in one go in one alert. Okay, so far so good. Now all we need to do is to invoke some elements of Charty app. The first thing I want to do is to, I just remove the y1. I want to create a new chart. So I click on create a new chart. Create a new chart. I give its title as my new chart. And once I've created a chart, I have to add series into this chart. So I click on add series to chart. Once I've created this chart, I automatically get the chart ID, which is a unique identifier for the chart that I've created. I can add a label. So the label I have is logarithmic of x, and I'm going to be using a line plot. So this is line with x values. I'm going to be using the variable x. Y values, I'm going to be using the variable y1. In show more, do you want a secondary axis? No. I can also add the other axis, but let's just quickly go and see how we are doing. So I'll add another action called open app, and I'll be opening Charty after this. So I go to this and I select on Charty. Let's see if everything is working correct on this or not. Okay, could not add series. There seems to be some problem. I think what we want to do is to, instead of, yeah, I think we chosen the wrong variables. Maybe they were not picked up as variables, but just as strings maybe. Okay, let's click done, and let's now try and run the second plot. Right, good. So now we've been able to create, no, in fact, my new chart still seems to be empty. Clearly something wrong. Let's go back. I think this is a good exercise to figure out what is going wrong. So we have add series, we have in the repeat, we had add repeat index to x, add repeat index to y. Let me just remove these. The x values are indeed x, and the y values are indeed y. Let me just try this again to see if I've maybe figured out what is going on. Okay, my new chart, I see. So okay, previous one was probably the older one. Yeah, this is something we need to fix to figure out that we don't get confused by the older charts. And we get this chart. We can now modify various things, but I don't want to do this. I want to now add the second series also. So I have added one series logarithmic of x to chart ID. I do add series to chart again. And before I open Charty, I add another series sinusoidal of x to chart ID. So this is important, not to series ID. I want to add this to, sorry, you choose the magic variable, you want to add it to the chart ID with x values being x again, y values being y2. Okay, so this should hopefully work. Let's run this and see. We should get both the plots in one axis. And that is indeed correct. We see both the logarithmic and sinusoidal in one go. I changed the legend to right. Of course, I can specify some of these strings as options in a text file, and I can also then automatically apply these. For example, I always prefer the legend to be on the right, and I prefer without making this plot without a border. So far, so good. Now we were restricted in the number of elements we had in the x-axis and then therefore in the y and the z-axis. I think what I want to do is to let the user suggest how many times or what is the range of the plot, and this is basically the x-axis. We want the user to enter only a number, the default being 10, and repeat. We'll change this and we'll select a magic variable, which is the provided input. So based on the input that we provide in the question, we'll be able to generate now different plots. This looks good. So what is the range? I want to, let's say, make a much bigger plot. So I want to see x go through 20. Now this entire thing runs. And if I now view this plot, this is how a plot looks like. So again, let me just change it to right and remove the border. So I hope you got a good sense of how we can very quickly create various kinds of plots. Of course, for this particular illustration, I was using some simple data sources, but we can definitely pull in some data sources about your own from the entire suite of shortcuts that we already have, and then we can make some beautiful charts out of them.